Welcome to my channel, Down and Dirty Yogi. I'm G, your Down and Dirty Yogi. We are going to be discussing a lot of things in this conversation with my guest, Nichele Carter, today, but mostly we're going to be focused on the interrelationships of Black men and Black women, and let's just call it what it is. Some of the trauma these dudes put us women through.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This was actually inspired by a post I made, and I'm going to share that post, some of it, about Meg Thee Stallion, who was shot by her boyfriend, and the trauma that we as Black women have to endure and think about when we are traumatized by Black men. It's multi-leveled, and we're going to talk about it. So, Nichele, take a moment, give us a little bit about you, introduction, and why this is important and what your input can be from the sociological standpoint.
Okay. So first, I really appreciate you, just overall in general.
Oh, thank you.
But I also appreciate you doing this, like opening up a safe space just for Black women to talk, because that's not always, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the time, a lot of the spaces to talk about these kinds of things become dominated by men.
They do. And I expect to see a lot of male commentary on this, and it's probably not going to be nice, but whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. So at any rate, by way of introduction, just to help fuel that fire, I am Nichele Carter-Peterson, is my married name. I started out basically studying theology because I've just always been a questioner, and I think I started out with these universal questions about God and people, and why did God make people the way God did, and what's that relationship supposed to be? But I think after seminary, and then I got a doctorate in ministry, I feel like it's not that I exhausted theology, it's that I realized theology can't be exhausted. Like, it's okay, you're not going to learn all of this.
Right.
And yet I still was feeling I had more questions, thousands of dollars in debt, but had more questions than answers. And I think that caused me to realize a lot of the questions that I really had weren't about God, why did you do this? It was, why are we doing this to ourselves and to each other? And so that kind of led me down the path I'm on now, where I'm pursuing a PhD in sociology, which, I mean, it's crazy. At one point, I was working on 2 doctorates simultaneously, which kind of sounds crazy, but the path that that I was following, it made sense, and it's been really helpful for me to tie in some of the ways that society works, and the way that religion has played a horrible role in the way society is working.
I completely agree. And one of the things that stands out to me is that how many men can use the Bible as a crutch to be abusive in certain ways and say that it's then the woman's fault, and the conversations that I've had with some guys, and as soon as you back them in the corner, they throw out the Bible, they're like, well, then God, and I'm just like,
right.
Okay. But
that's where I come in.
right. And so it's an interesting thing, because I'm not really a Christian, and I actually studied theology in school. Thanks. But I studied theology in school as well, right, in college. And I think as Black people, we struggle, well, some of us, right? Some of us struggle with that duality of Christianity, white supremacy, all of the things that are wrapped up in it, and the inability to let some of it go, really, is really a challenge. I think when I started this conversation, and one of the things that stood out to me is how quickly, like you were saying, these men make this stuff about them, right? And so I started the conversation with the post and about Meg Thee Stallion being shot by her boyfriend. The the commentary was basically of a woman saying how, to our own detriment as Black women, we are often protecting Black men from the police, even when they're attacking us. And it started really, really cool in some ways. Some women were sharing their stories about their own experiences. And really quickly, dudes jumped in to invalidate what we were saying was happening to us. And the main theme was they were isolated incidents. And I came back and I was like, I'm a part of certain groups where there's thousands of women with hundreds of stories. So exactly when does it go from being an isolated incident to a trend, right? And to a reality that so many women are experiencing. And it's not like we're looking for validation, but we want to be seen and heard, right? And that seems to be the challenge, like to be seen and heard. And basically the conversation turned into them proving my point that we're not being heard and listened to. And the thing that I was hoping you could give me some input on is, why has it become such a battle between Black men and Black women in regards to who has it worse? Because women have it worse, period. Whether you're a Black woman, a white woman, a Latina woman, whatever group you fall into ethnically, you have it worse than any man in that group, in that same ethnic group. But Black men are doubling down on Black women, and it's like, nah, because the police, nah, because of, pay wage disparity, nah, like they keep coming up with something, right? And it's just like, we get killed too, not only by the police, but by y'all. We get, we still don't get paid as much as we're worth, and Black women have become some of the most educated people in the United States. I mean, look at you, right? Like, I have so many friends that went to school that have multiple PhDs, multiple master's degrees.
And still don't earn as much as men.
And still don't. And still don't have the same level of respect when you walk in the room,
Yeah.
So, like, why do you think that we in the community are still battling with this, like from like your sociological, theological, you know what I mean, like, perspective?
So let's start with the theological part. And you tap danced like right on top of it. It's we justify it through scripture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what makes it really bad, and I almost wish you could just turn comments off because, like, I already know.
Right.
But sadly, I feel like Black women contribute to their own oppression when it comes to theological matters. So the whole notion that the man is the head and the man is basically superior, women buy into that. And the Black church is built on that. The Black church is the only place where Black men can rule and have, complete respect and domination, total submission from women. And it's a theological thing, but then it also is a social construct in the Black community. Like, this is who we are. Like, this is what we do. This is who we are, and we protect our Black men in those ways. And we want him to feel like a king, and we want our sons, and that's real. But sadly, That's not scriptural. Like, that's not, for me. It's been really important to go. So I know Christianity gets real complicated, and I still consider myself a Christian. But because of the twists and turns Christianity has taken, I also say I'm not that kind. Like, if that's what Christianity is, I'm not that.
Right.
And so when I go back, when I look my theological framework is really always about understanding God. Like that's been my life pursuit, not Christianity, but just really who are you, God? What are you saying? What do you think? How do you feel about me? How should I feel? And in pursuing God, the easiest way to figure out what God intended, is to look at what God did in the very beginning. And in the very beginning, that's when everything was perfect and good and the way God wanted it. You know what I mean? Like, you know, you create a thing and it's like,
Right, right.
perfect. And if we take a snapshot of what that looked like for God, it was complete equality. It was man, woman facing each other equal. Like there was no submissive role for one person. All of that came into play biblically after this fall, after this sin, after this
Yes. Oh my God.
incident
I
happened.
know. That is like one of the, like that's one of the things that men will always use against us, right? Eve ate the apple. And I'm like, a man wrote the Bible, right? So it's real easy to say that it's the girl's fault, right? It's real, real easy. But what I think is, and what you said about like within the community and Black women playing a role in trying to uplift Black men, right? Like that's really what they're trying to do. Like in that thing where they are also somehow feeding their own oppression. They are also trying to do that thing where and I feel like I've done this in relationships with men where you are trying to make them feel like society hasn't been beating down on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how it's been beating down on you, you are still trying to be like, you are still so much better, so much more royal than people are recognizing, right? Like, and we do play that part. And like even in that thread, when I said to them, I'm like, I'm a woman first, and this is through evolution, right? Like
Like,
I had to understand, like, I'm a woman first. And yeah, I'm a Black woman, but you know what? If my Blackness isn't going to save me from someone, my I'm still a woman, you know what I mean? So it's become that way where I put my femininity, my womanhood, if you will, ahead of this idea. Because like what I have found, and I think what so many of us have found, is that in the community, our Blackness doesn't save us, you
right,
know? And
right.
so it's just like, if that's not going to save me with you, then what's the point of that being my first thing? You know what I mean? Like, Black woman, da da da, mother, child, all these things. It's like, no, I'm a woman. Yes, I'm a Black woman. And then I'm these things, all these other things as well. And sociologically, we have been, I mean, I know the feedback we're going to get about like this idea, right? Because so many of us have been taught over and over and over again this way, of being, even if we don't consciously see it, it's
Mm-hmm.
there, right? So I'm like, when we were, and you read the thread, right? I might share some
Yeah.
of the comments, right? And it turned into a battle of I didn't do it, you know,
Yeah.
it wasn't me,
Yeah.
and one of the
Not
women,
women.
exactly, one of the women was like, because we all know each other from different points in times, it's like, oh, some of you are reformed, right? And like that's the thing.
That is a
People
thing.
people don't want to recognize that they've done damage along the way, and then they're like, okay, now I'm a biblical
Mm-hmm.
Bible following Jesus dude, and all my past, because I've been forgiven and washed of my sins, have, I'm good, right? Like that's the Christian way. But they don't talk about the damage that's left behind, whether it be emotional, physical, spiritual, of these women that they affected along the way on their way to their journey. Like those women don't count anymore. And that's what really like struck me. How do we start to talk to these men so that they hear us? Is there a way?
So what something you said too, like, and again, going through that theological, that spiritual journey, even, and I mean, it's like we have to work within the confines of Christianity because it's so interwoven in the Black community.
Right.
But like you're saying, even these guys who become reformed and whatever else, some of them still clearly from the comment section hold these misogynistic views that they are supposed to lead or be the head of women. And I think it's what gives them the audacity to enter into those kinds of conversations with authority. Like, how are you entering into a conversation about Black women's feelings with authority, with any authority on this topic?
Exactly, and devaluing them.
It still comes from that deep-seated place that they are to rule over.
Right.
In any space, in any given space, they still hold that they are created to rule over women. And if they are true Christians, then the entire purpose of Jesus Christ, at the risk of sounding like a televangelist, but seriously, like the whole purpose of Jesus was to undo all of the hot mess that happened from sin and restore everything back to that original intention.
I think that you're right. Like that head of household thing, they double down on it, right? And the idea that a woman would have the audacity to just say, my feelings matter, and these statements that I'm making are true and valuable, and they really they started, you saw, like they start tagging their boys, like, come in here and get these chicks, and I was like, really?
Right.
And I couldn't get over how they kept making it about them, and they kept saying, well, give examples, call names, do this, that, and the other. And when someone did, then they're like, well, nah, because this, or nah, because that,
Right.
And then it was like, we don't remember this that way, or this, it was just, and it was like, and I kept saying, this conversation isn't about you. It's not about you. And they couldn't even accept that. They couldn't accept that it's about us.
Right.
And that was it. It was about an experience. It was about our ongoing experiences in this world. And when, we talk about religion and Christianity and Jesus, like the concept of Jesus, he was a radical, and he went against the status quo of his era, right? And whether you believe he existed or not, believe like whatever, I don't think it matters, right? Like the story is that, the story is that he went against the status quo of the era and wanted to change things. Then I don't think Jesus's idea of himself was to become the Messiah and a martyr that we've made him, right? Like, but that's what's happened. And we now have this tool that's often used to oppress,
Like the exact opposite of the intent. Like, literally.
Exactly.
And that makes my head hurt daily. Because it's like, this, you're doing it. Like, that's, like, you're doing it.
Right.
It's literally the exact thing that Jesus, I mean, like, verbatim spoke against. It blows your mind. And, Jesus talks about this kingdom that is upside down and not everyone will get it. And And I understand that, but to have to live in the middle of it is mind numbing. Like, and your post to me, like reading those comments, the way oppression works, it's almost like you can fill in the blank. It's almost like some quadratic equation from hell, because I see these same conversations happen with white women who want to center themselves in conversations about Black beauty. You know, well, we're all beautiful.
Right.
About this
Exactly.
right now.
Exactly.
Or white people in general who want to say all lives matter. Okay. Like nobody said.
Exactly.
Why are you censoring yourself? And I get it's uncomfortable. You know, you don't meet the criteria of this particular group that is having a conversation, and it in some ways does affect you and it makes you uncomfortable, but that doesn't give you the right to then try to dismiss and basically massage your own feelings by devaluing the feelings in this space. And we can go on and on. The gay community as a whole, everybody feels like they have the right to.
Right, to come in and say something. Exactly. It's like, you know, I mean, and oh my God, we should talk about that one day as related to like Christianity. Yes, we can. Like trans lives. I mean, like the whole thing, and like it's on my list of things to talk about because I think, you know, some of the things that's wrapped up in this, you know, patriarchal idea in the Black community is wrapped up in homophobia. It's wrapped up in all of these things that this toxic masculinity has left us with, right? So, you know, like one of the things like, you know, one of the posts I made about Kamala Harris, right? And it was meant to be sarcastic and funny, but nobody got the joke. So everybody was like it was kind of like how these men are always talking about Black women really focused on physicalities, right? And everyone's like, you know, so many of these men who don't like Black women were having this issue with Kamala Harris, even though she fits the idea of a lot of their physically, you know what I mean? Fits the idea. Like she's multi-ethnic, she's light-skinned, and it was meant to be sarcastic. These men who, and some women, definitely don't get the duality when we talk about them the way they talk about us. When we objectify them the way they objectify us, it becomes a whole different ideology that they can't even wrap their heads around, you know? And in this conversation where we talk about abuse and, you know, being the victims within our community, they don't see how, and when I was thinking about this conversation, like some serious like topics came up to me in respects to how that history of abuse is, you know, from when we're little girls and no one's talking to us about sex, right?
Yeah.
And then we start to grow and develop, and how many women have stories of having sex when they didn't want to, you know, feeling like they couldn't say no, you know, feeling like, you know, I was in a position where I was, you know, I had gone too far, you know, down this certain path, and he wouldn't take no for an answer, or it'd be easier just to get it over with. And, you know, these are forms of abuse that many men aren't even aware has happened in their lives, you know, because the women keep silent. And it starts with the inability for us to be given that power over our bodies, that power to say no, or I've changed my mind, or this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And, you know, like, there doesn't have to be a reason. It's just like, dude, I'm out. And you know, like, people don't necessarily see that as what it is, that inability, you know, and feeling like, oh, if I do this, not only am I going to hurt his feelings, you know, and it's my fault for being here
Mm,
in this position, you know. So it starts there, you know,
mhm.
and it builds up to those little things of, you know, constant, I don't know, abuse, you know, like
Yeah.
in different forms and in different ways that men don't even recognize our realities.
Or feel, just listening to you say that, it's almost as if they feel obligated to, or feel that we're obligated to provide that.
Oh yeah.
Almost like it's our role,
Mhm.
it's our position, it's our status, to be that soft place to fall, or to be that doormat, or to be
Right.
that
That therapist.
right,
Right.
right, that punching bag, that whatever's
Exactly.
needed in the moment.
Exactly.
We're supposed to absorb it. And I started having a flashback when I was in preschool. I experienced, it's not funny at all. It's only funny because I was so young,
Right.
but I've always been a very deep feeler. So it's like, for me, it was real, and I still feel those feelings. But it was like domestic violence. There was this little boy that used to just punch me,
Mhm.
um, in the back of the little school bus going to preschool. And I was clear that he liked me. Like I was his, I don't, girlfriend. I was his special person. And we would have fun all day at school, but then every time we got on the bus, he would just punch me in my arm, like continuously, and it hurt.
Right.
And I didn't have, I didn't understand why it was happening. Of course, now as an adult, I'm like, he saw that mess somewhere, and he was acting
Mhm.
out, like that. He had an issue,
Right.
but I didn't have the wherewithal to process that. I just knew it hurt, and I don't like this part. I like
Right.
when you share your candy and your crayons. But I don't like this part at
Right.
all.
Right.
And I didn't know how to say that to him, because it was almost like it felt like this is something that he needs to do,
Mhm.
and because I'm his friend, I have to
Let
I'm
him do it. And you know, the other thing is how often, especially when we were growing up, did you hear when you told your parents or an adult, this boy's picking on me, he makes me feel bad or whatever. It's like, oh, he's doing it because he likes you. He's doing it
exactly
because he likes you. And you carry this idea that you have to continue to fight in some way when someone likes you. You know, it's like the world's sickest way of teaching love. You know, like how are you teaching love to children if you're like telling your son, hey, it's okay to show this side of yourself to someone, and it's okay to, if you know, like you don't know where to put your feelings, you know, you can put them violently
right,
on the person you supposedly like, and the person you like is being taught, well, that's what love looks like. It's
right. And make sure you
painful.
find a woman who can handle that. Like that's how
Exactly.
you find a good woman.
Exactly. And the more she can handle,
Exactly.
the gooder she is.
You don't want one that talks back.
No, no, no. Exactly. Exactly.
You want
And
one that can submit.
exactly. And it's really interesting when, you know, as you look through the history of, you know, your own dating life, you if these people would also look at their history in a real way, what that would reveal, you know, and how much we have or haven't grown in the sense of relationships and what that really looks like. I think that I've been, you know, really watching more and more, especially, you know, like now social media is making things more evident.
Hmm.
And you get to see the responses of people,
Hmm.
and it's depressing, really, because it's
It
like
is.
we're not evolving the way we should as human beings, or way you think we should as human beings, right? Like, be it through sexuality, gender, race, ethnicity, all of these things, it's like a de-evolution, if anything, you know? And how is that like I mean, as you study sociology, like, and history, right? When you look at rises and falls of societies, you start to see these breakdowns in the social
It's
structure.
cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a cycle, and that's when I go back to my quadratic equation from hell. It's like people don't want to lose power,
Yeah.
whoever it is. Capitalism. It's people are gonna die to protect their interests,
Mm-hmm.
protect their image, to protect their ego, to protect their money, their status in a society. And for Black men, they're second to last on the totem pole socially, especially in the US. So it's like the only person left to oppress, or the only privilege left to hold on to, is the privilege they hold over women.
Right.
And I'm gonna put this caveat there, just so I don't know, hopefully to take some of the air out of it. We know it's not all men.
Obviously.
We know that.
We know it's not all men. Exactly. And you always have to say that, right? Because when you're talking about a specific group, they will, like, those few guys who are like, I've never, like, it wasn't me. It's like, all right, we're not talking to you. We're not talking about you, but at least recognize that you got brothers in there who this is like, like, this is the reality.
This information to
the people who need it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Recognize that because what I swear, it feels like regardless of what you say, like, everyone has a different experience, right? And regardless of how many times you say, this is about these particular people, this is about this group, this is about, a certain aspect of a culture, they want to make it into, like, you're talking about everybody. And if you're not actively, and I mean actively, sleeping with a Black man, then you hate them, right? Like, that's the way they interpret it. It's just like, she's not on camera sleeping with a Black man. Neither of them are. They hate Black men. What? It's like, and really?
You're absolutely right. I think that, I process that too. Like, neither of us
right.
Are Black men. And yet I have a dad.
Mm-hmm. Brothers. Sons.
Brothers. But
yeah,
I wish I did. I always wish I did. I have friends that are like brothers. I have a son, and I hate that I even have to quantify or qualify this in any way. But, I'm not that woman. I'm not.
Exactly.
I hate Black men. Like,
exactly. It's absurd. It's the most. It's like the most absurd thing that it's like their only comeback to be like, well, you know what? You don't like Black men. And it's like, really? But why do you say that? Because that's part of the patriarch, exactly. And it's part of the idea that we cannot express ourselves freely. And it's just like, oh, keep it to yourself, shut the hell up, and take this foot on your back.
Yeah, exactly. And in my case, I love Black women. So I'm fighting. I'm going to fight for Black women. And I think I alluded to that in the post too, that I consider myself to be a womanist, which is a little different from a feminist. I think I love Alice Walker said a womanist is to a feminist as purple is to lavender. Mm-hmm. So it's like a deeper hue of feminism that incorporates the Black experience, and literally incorporates the fact that Black women care about Black men and everybody. We're not just fighting, like, the feminist movement was largely about equal rights and wages and that, and Black women had a kind of a different fight altogether, still do. Right. If you watch The Color Purple, like, it embodies womanist theology, and it's not only theology; it's also a social theory at this point. It's Black women fighting for ourselves and each other and the rest of the world, versus us only fighting for everybody else. It's like womanism reorients us to to center ourselves as well and see
Right.
ourselves as important.
Exactly. And I think like you hit on like something really important is like black women are always fighting for everyone else. And we are often left out of the fight for ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I got into a thing with one of those same guys, and he was saying, black men have led all the civil rights movements. And I was just like, are you high on something? I was just like, what are you talking? I was like, let's just start with current times. The Black Lives Matter movement was started by a black woman. I was
And
like,
queer. Can we put that part in there too?
yes, and queer. And I was just like, what are you talking about? You know what I mean? And I was just like, I was like, the faces of these movements are
Exactly.
often black men, but the push behind it, the leaders of those movements have always been black women. Always.
And the
And
face was because of patriarchy. Like it would not have been acceptable for a woman to lead
exactly.
a movement.
Exactly. So it's convenient, and that's what when they throw back up the Bible again, and I'm like, it was written by a man. Convenient.
Several,
You know,
several.
exactly. So I'm just like, it's convenient because now I was just like, and I get it, the Bible. But I'm like, if we decided to pick up American history in the future and that became a Bible, what would that look like? You know? I was like, we'd still all be in shackles. Like it wouldn't be the same thing. Like you can pick up a book and say, yeah, this is a history thing that we could follow or that could enlighten us to
Mm-hmm.
not make the same mistakes, to not live in a past that doesn't fit the current life. And I think that is, a huge aspect of what's happening right now and why, because people are still grasping at something that they don't know what to grasp at, and they are afraid of what the future really looks like. And a future to me that is well balanced, and equal for all
Mm-hmm.
of us is really important, and what I would like to see. And I mean, and I don't just mean black men and black women, but all of us,
Yeah.
regardless of, ethnicity, regardless of sexuality, regardless of gender, like if we ever could get there,
Or
like
get back there.
yes, or get back
That
there.
was that was the goal.
That was the original idea, but it's got twisted up in I mean, for me, to me, and you could tell me, like, if, as far as like Christianity and the spread of it was also the spread of Christianity was also the spread of white supremacy. And when they started looking at how other cultures were living their lives and wanting to restrict them more and more and create these boundaries that basically were like, we're superior than all of your ideals, because sexuality varied from the beginning. Like you
Yeah.
said, it wasn't something that all of a sudden is a new construct. So
Right.
these constructs started to get evil because people started to want to apply this idea that someone's given them of what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah. Christianity became a great vehicle um, for, like you said, white supremacy and capitalism. Like, it historically, like you can see points in history where it happened.
Right.
Like, oh, we can use this.
Hmm.
But what frustrates me, just a smaller thing, is that the original spread of Christianity was all in the Middle East. Like it was Africa. It was, there was a whole Ethiopian eunuch in the Bible who was spreading the gospel,
Mm.
the Christianity, spreading
Hmm.
Christianity. before this colonized version that we all are so frustrated with even appeared.
Right.
So it's almost like white supremacists tried to hijack Christianity too. And like so I'm leery to say, it's the white man's, the white man's religion. No, the white man thinks it's the white man's religion, but it really isn't.
Right.
It wasn't.
Right. I think like when I think about it, I think about like from the spread of the from the I'm having brain fart. The Pope sending everyone out
Yeah.
to start doing, the
Yeah.
Crusades. That's what I was trying to like. That's where I
Yeah.
see the spread of it becoming what it is right now.
And the white Jesus.
Exactly.
Portrait.
So I think that's what I see as the thing that started to repress the other ethnicities, and it started with the Crusades, and here we are still in some form of that. Like
the hierarchy, like
yeah.
it's deeply ingrained in our society, like this hierarchy of worthiness. It's based on pigmentation of your skin, it's based on gender, it's like it's still here. And the
Right.
conversation we're having is a sect. It's the Black community's sect of that hierarchical dysfunction, and how it affects us. But it is part of this larger craziness of our society.
What do you think when we have these conversations in our community? What do you think when people are going to say white people, like part of the problem is that white people shouldn't be privy to this information. They shouldn't know, like these are like, because this is a thing, right? It's a thing. It's like, it's like airing out your dirty laundry. It's like it's like pointing out the cousin or the uncle in the corner who's the molester, right? So it's like, what do you think, or how can we Black folks just be like, you know what? This is a conversation we need to have. And you know what? White people can hear it. It's fine. Because the truth of the matter is, society is bigger than all of us. And the recognition that Black women have these battles is important to the broader sense, in my opinion. Like, but from your perspective, like, what do you, like, how do we get past that? Like, how can we have these conversations and Black folks don't get mad just because white folks are listening?
Well, I think it helps that we've addressed the fact that white folks do all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Like this is a microcosm of what white supremacy has done. So if a white person is watching this thinking, oh my God, Black people are worse than I thought, like, that's foolish,
Exactly.
That's foolish. And secondly, I don't mind white people listening, to a certain extent, because like I said, they need to understand too. Everybody needs to understand
Exactly
these dynamics, because it's not, again, you can fill in the blanks. So take this conversation and apply it in your own house. How are you treating your white wife?
Right. How are you teaching your sons to treat women?
Exactly.
Yeah.
How do you treat the Black women in your office? How many are you, if you're an employer, how many promotions have you given Black women? What kind of positions are they in?
Are you listening to them?
Exactly. Are you listening to your daughter?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I completely agree, because I think that we're talking about a microcosm, but it is really reflective of something much bigger. And people often are like, oh God, I'm going to tune this off because like they're talking Black shit. Right. And it's not just that. It's really not that. It's like one of these things where, yeah, it's something that happens to us, but it's also something that happens to other people in different lights. I think what makes it special for us as Black women is the relationship that Black people have to social authority. And That's what makes it different for us.
Yeah.
So I think, like, you know, even as I was reflecting on that post, and there were like things that people were calling out, the women who were commenting were still protecting Black men. They were not calling names. They were trying to be general. They were like, look, these are things that are happening. We know other women that these things are happening to. What we're asking is for a bit of recognition.
Yeah.
You know, you don't even have to validate me. I know my story is valid,
Yeah.
but accept and recognize it's true. You know,
And the space to do that,
exactly.
you know, is so important. So even as you and I are talking, and this feels like a really safe space, it's unfortunate that in the back of our minds we are thinking about the comments, like, because at some point they're going to attempt to invade this space.
Right.
But I think one of the really important things for Black women is, you know, always going to be spaces that are just for us. Like,
Exactly.
no, you don't get to, Black men, white women, you don't get to, you are not entitled to every space.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
it's an element of privilege to assume that you get to occupy every space. I said no.
Right.
We
Right.
said no.
Exactly. Exactly. No, that's it. That is exactly it. There needs to be, and certain people need safe spaces, you know? Not everybody needs a safe space, but there
Right.
are certain people who do, and we rarely get them. You know, we rarely get them. We live in so many other people's spaces.
Exactly.
And when people come in and say, well, white women are abused. Yes, no one said they're not. Well, you know, this, that, and no one said it doesn't happen,
Exactly.
you know, but there's a different social construct.
Absolutely. Because when you said that, I'm like, you know, you can hear the reverse racism. Now, if we did that and we said Black people weren't allowed, first of all, you did do that.
Yeah,
And that's why we're here.
exactly.
We
Exactly.
need this space to process the trauma of all of that. It's not equal.
No.
You know, when we talk about scripture, there's this scripture that's really been in my mind the past few years about false balance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it calls it an abomination. And it's like, that is one of the things that I keep seeing play out over and over and over is these false balances, these false equivalencies. Like,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
nothing equal or balanced about Black women needing a safe space, and the rest of the earth
Exactly.
feeling like they need a safe space. No one has ever. You got golf courses, you got country clubs, you got all kinds of safe spaces.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's like, it's not genuine. It's again an attempt to be dismissive
Exactly.
and not value
And
who
to
we are.
change the subject, okay? To change the subject, to make it more about them.
Because
Because,
it's
exactly, because it's just like, instead of being like, let me recognize what you're saying, listen, and try and understand. Now I want to make it about me because I feel uncomfortable, because I'm like feeling a certain way. And that's one of the things too, like trauma. I'm going to be doing some yoga things, kind of addressing trauma in our bodies, how we hold emotional trauma
wow.
in our bodies, and ways to start
Please
releasing
tag
them.
me. I
Okay.
want to. I need to see that.
Okay, I will. I will. But I think that as we are evolving as humans, right? Mostly, hopefully, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, we have to recognize not everybody's space is the same. And how coming to someone's space that's supposed to be a moment of expression for them is
Mm-hmm.
not okay to be like, well, what about me? Or what
Yeah.
about those like me? Or what about, nobody is devaluating your stuff because I'm telling you right now, about me, about you, about like some other women like me. Like it doesn't devalue you. And I think it's just where we are in the world right now that we have to even say that this is the truth, you know, of
Right.
how people express things. But I'm going to I'm going to let you go. I got another baby coming my way. Oh my
Okay.
goodness, girl. See these babies. They're
I'm gonna be right
constantly,
there 5 years from now.
oh my gosh, girl. I'm so
We can
tired.
talk about that later.
Yes, we can. I'm gonna tell you about my yesterday. I'll message you later because I was just like these kids trying to kill me. But thank you, Nichele, so much
Thank you.
for joining me. If anybody's watching, subscribe to the channel.
Okay.
So, all right. Thank you so much, and ciao,
Thank you.
ciao.